When my fiancé's mistress lifted her chin in defiance, bragging that he once blocked an entire highway just for her, I simply smiled and said, "That's a criminal act." And then I showed her, I don't block roads. I block the entire empire of his family. The next day, she was the one screaming, "If it were you standing in front of such a provocative mistress, how would you respond? Comment your answer right now." Miss Reed, I heard you and Mr. Hayes are about to share some good news. Reed Corporation's market value just went up another $2 billion. What a double win. The man's voice rang out, laced with sarcasm, right in the middle of the engagement party. He raised his glass of wine, his eyes glinting as if he were waiting for a performance. The entire room, filled with expensive suits and glittering gowns, seemed to hold its breath for a moment, waiting to see how I would respond. I smiled, the perfect smile I had practiced hundreds of times in front of the mirror. The air in the ballroom was thick with the scent of luxury perfume, the soft clink of glasses, and discreet whispers. I stood there, holding my wine glass, my fingers lightly tracing the rim, feeling the coolness of the glass. The chandelier above cast its glow, reflecting on the white silk dress I wore, making me look like the center of attention. But I knew their eyes were not filled with admiration. They were waiting for me to stumble, waiting for me to lose face, waiting to see how the fiancé Connor Hayes had belittled would react when mocked in front of the entire elite circle. "What a double win," he repeated, emphasizing the words as if sharing a secret everyone already knew. I heard soft chuckles from a few nearby, quick glances, half smiles. They knew about Connor throwing money at his mistress. They knew the whispers that I was nothing more than a fiancé in name only. I tilted my head slightly so the chandelier's light highlighted the diamond necklace around my neck. "Are you sure," I said, my voice calm but sharp, "that the market value rose because I'm marrying Connor? Or because I just approved $1 billion contract last week?" The room fell silent, only the faint sound of violins drifting from the orchestra in the corner. The man blinked, the smile frozen on his lips. I saw his fingers tighten around his glass, the red liquid trembling, almost spilling over. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. I didn't stop. "When will Connor and I get married?" I continued, as if reciting a financial report. "That's when I'll sign off on your company's investment request." Every eye in the room shifted to him. The ones who had been snickering went quiet. A few turned their faces away, pretending to be busy. He stammered, "Miss Reed, I was wrong. Please, be generous and forgive me." His face turned pale, sweat beading on his forehead. He bowed his head, forcing out a conciliatory smile, but his eyes betrayed his panic. I gently swirled the wine in my glass. The red reflection flickered across his face, highlighting his wide, fearful eyes. "Too late," I said, and with that, I turned and walked away. Behind me, I heard his trembling voice calling after me, "Miss Reed, please, I didn't mean it." But I didn't look back. Inside, I smiled. Not the polite smile I gave to guests, but the smile I reserved for myself. It was strange. Reed Corporation's market value had risen by $2 billion. My rank on Forbes had climbed up a notch. Why did they only see me as the fiancé Connor dismissed, and not the one who actually held their financial fate in my hands? I paused on the outdoor balcony, the night air cool and carrying the scent of roses from the garden below. I stood there, one hand resting lightly on the railing, looking down at the scene beneath. The crowd inside was still busy, but my attention was drawn to a couple who had just arrived late. The man was tall, with a cold presence, his black suit fitted to his frame, giving off a quiet authority. Connor Hayes, my fiancé in name only. Beside him was an unfamiliar woman, her blonde hair shining, but her steps unsteady in high heels. She stepped on her train and went sprawling into the lap of a nearby guest, a flustered voice popping out. "Ah, sorry." The room fell silent, all eyes turning toward her. People looked puzzled. A few whispers started to ripple. "Whose daughter is that? I've never seen her before. Probably never taught manners. So clumsy. How embarrassing. New money, clearly no class." The woman's face flushed bright red, her hands clutching the hem of her dress, standing awkwardly in the crowd like a small animal caught in the spotlight. I walked down the stairs. The crowd's gaze shifted from her to me, and I felt the atmosphere change. I smiled, a polite smile that carried a quiet authority. "The Romane Conti I ordered from France has arrived," I said, my voice soft but clear enough to carry across the room. "If no one minds, I'll have a few bottles sent to the house as gifts." My words were like a breeze, dissipating the awkwardness. Guests immediately smiled, thanked me. Laughter and conversation picked up again. The small incident was swept away as if it had never happened. I moved closer to the woman, my eyes passing over her for a few seconds. "I don't believe we've met. Which family are you from? Do you have an invitation?" She gave a strained smile, her lips trembling slightly. She glanced at me, then turned to Connor, her tone sharp, though she kept a bit of politeness. "Connor, who is she to speak to me like that? Does she think she's the queen here?" Connor looked at me, his gaze as cold as ice. "She's with me," he said, his voice steady, but with a hint of challenge. "Is there a problem?" I smiled, my smile unshaken. "Of course not." The next day, Reed Corporation sent an ultimatum to Hayes Enterprises, demanding immediate repayment of the $500 million commercial loan. Connor dared to embarrass me in front of everyone? Then don't blame me when I make him pay. The news about Reed Corporation's ultimatum demanding Hayes Enterprises immediately repay the $500 million loan spread like wildfire, shaking the business world. Hayes Enterprises was in turmoil, but inside Reed Corporation there was unrest too. The old-fashioned shareholders, in their outdated gray suits, objected fiercely, mumbling about marriages for business interests as if it were a miracle cure, as if an engagement ring could secure a partnership forever. I didn't bother arguing. I sat at the head of the conference table, my cold gaze sweeping across every face, calling over a dozen meetings through the night. The protests gradually died down in the face of the financial figures I presented, the contracts I had signed, and the undeniable truth. Reed Corporation was stronger than ever, not because of Connor Hayes, but because of me. Those who knew their place quietly accepted the profits from their shares. I guaranteed the money would flow. Anyone who dared oppose me either got expelled or was forced to sell their stake. Half a month later, I had settled the internal conflicts. The boardroom no longer echoed with whispers of discontent. I stepped out of Reed Corporation's building, the afternoon sun shining on my deep blue silk dress, highlighting sharp lines. My private car wasn't parked at the usual spot. Instead, a purple Lamborghini stood right at the gate, its gold trim gleaming under the sun, garish to the point of absurd. Because of its flashy color, he didn't even know how many times it had hit the hot search, earning him the nickname Wall Street Prince. He treasured that car like a gem, yet I, the so-called fiancé, had never once been allowed to sit inside it. Now, with it right in front of me, I couldn't even be bothered to look at it. "Samantha Reed, if you've gone mad, then get treatment. Do you even know what you're doing?" Connor's voice cut through, sharp and angry. He strode toward me, eyebrows furrowed, eyes flashing with frustration mixed with panic. I threw the folder against his chest, the sound of paper hitting his suit flat and dry. "I don't want to cooperate with Hayes Enterprises anymore," I said, my voice feather light. "Don't you understand?" The folder was heavy, stuffed with documents now void. Even thinking briefly, I knew how much Hayes Enterprises would lose. Hundreds of millions of dollars, maybe more. Connor's face shifted from flushed red to pale white, then back again. His grip tightened around the folder, his knuckles whitening. "Don't think this will make me see you differently," he growled. "Restore the cooperation. At least on the surface we won't look this bad. Playing dumb or just dumb? Was this mess because of a single word I said? Or because he openly cheated, turning me into a joke before the entire elite circle?" I let out a faint laugh, my eyes drifting to the back seat of the Lamborghini. Tiffany was crouched down, peeking toward us through the glass. Her hair reached her waist, her eyes gloomy. When she realized I had noticed, she recoiled, accidentally hitting her head against the door with a small cry. Connor, even in the middle of a crisis, hadn't forgotten to bring her along. Admirable, this level of indulgence. He hadn't noticed the commotion behind him. Seeing my silence, he grew impatient, his voice rumbling. "Let's talk seriously." "Fine," I replied, arms crossed, my eyes never leaving him. "Get in the car." "You drove it here." He glanced back at the Lamborghini, then froze, as if remembering the mistress hidden inside. "Wait here," he said tensely. "I'll deal with the thing in the car first." He drove it into a muddy parking lot nearby, the wheels rolling through dirt, leaving smeared streaks. About 2 minutes later, he returned. But I was already in my own car, a sleek black Maybach parked not far away. It turned out my driver hadn't picked me up because he'd received a call from Connor saying he would take me home, telling him not to wait. After all, on paper, he was still the future son-in-law of the Reed family. The driver hadn't dared to argue, but hadn't left completely either, parking in a nearby lot. Seeing I hadn't followed the arrangement, Connor angrily slammed his hand against my car window, shouting, "Samantha, you dare play me?" 25 years living in privilege, he had never once been treated coldly, never once been dismissed by his fiancée. But he forgot one thing. When begging for my help, he needed the humble attitude of a man who begs. Inside the car, the air conditioning was on low, the warmth comfortable. I took off my coat, set it on the seat, calmly watching the man raging outside the glass. "Too dirty," I said, my voice even. "I don't want to." "What?" He hadn't yet processed it, his eyes wide in confusion. Following my gaze, he turned to look at the Lamborghini. Scratches from branches exposed patchy paint, the wheels caked in mud. The $1 million car now looked like trash. Just like the man. Unclean, nothing but garbage. "Connor, why did you make me get out of the car?" "It's too cold out here. I can't take it." Tiffany stumbled out of the parking lot, clinging to his arm, her white dress stained with mud. Her small face pale from the cold. She tried to look pitiful. Women like her always knew how to trigger a man's instinct to protect. Connor looked embarrassed, instinctively pushing her aside, then turned to me. "Don't misunderstand, she and I are just friends." "No need to explain," I said, my voice as light as air. "Whatever you say is fine." Ridiculous. Did he think I was stupid, or was he simply not smart enough to hide it? I signaled my driver, "Drive." The Maybach glided away, leaving Connor and Tiffany in a cloud of dust. Through the rearview mirror, I saw him standing there, fists clenched, his face burning red with rage and humiliation. Tiffany clung to his arm, but this time he shoved her off, as if she were the very cause of this downfall. The upper class always wants to pair people of equal status. Connor and I were no exception, similar in age, families evenly matched, making us the obvious choice for each other. But there was little affection between us. For years, I pretended not to know about the women outside. Connor was indeed contemptible, but the power and wealth of the Hayes family behind him were far too tempting. That said, Connor flaunted his affairs so openly that the entire elite circle knew. So why should I bother saving face anymore? I sat in my office, the desk lamp casting light on my hand as I flipped through a stack of documents. "Miss Reed, the information on Tiffany Schuyler has been investigated," my secretary said, placing the file in front of me. I opened it and skimmed through the lines. A second-year university student, a family struck by hardship, drowning in debt. She agreed to work at a nightclub to pay for medical treatment for her relatives. There, she met Connor, drunk, and took care of him through the night. When he woke, Connor believed he had forced himself on her in his drunken state, and from then on, he took care of her. I closed the file, the corner of my lips curving into a faint smile. This storyline sounds familiar, doesn't it? I said, my voice soft but laced with mockery. When I was a teenager, I used to stay up all night reading those dramatic novels, sighing as I read, "Thank goodness my future is to become a billionaire. What's so good about being Cinderella?" In the end, it only gets you the illusion of a man's love. Being a queen, that was my goal. One hand holding money, the other holding power. How freeing that would be. My secretary sensed my mood was off, quietly brewed a cup of coffee, the rich aroma spreading through the room. She set it down and asked softly, "Miss Reed, should we make her disappear completely?" I took a sip, the bitterness sliding across my tongue. "No need," I answered, my eyes drifting toward the window, my voice barely above a whisper. "Just add a little seasoning to their love. I want to see how much they really love each other." Half an hour later, the wedding invitations for Connor and me were delivered into Tiffany's hands. 3 hours later, she left behind a short note and quietly moved out of the luxurious apartment Connor provided. 4 hours later, Connor frantically mobilized every connection he had, driving that garish purple Lamborghini in a frenzy to find his runaway lover. When my secretary left the office, I turned on my computer and quietly erased over 10 gigabytes of novels stored on my hard drive. All those sappy love stories, all those shocking romances, they weren't worth a single cent. That night, someone surely tossed and turned sleepless. But not me. I slept deeply, because everything was still in my control. The next morning, I left work on time. The elevator slowly descended to the first floor. The doors opened, and the first thing I saw was Tiffany's face. She was sitting on the sofa in the main lobby, surrounded by several tall bodyguards standing still like statues. I furrowed my brows slightly. A small gesture, but enough for my secretary to understand. She pressed the emergency button on her phone, her voice calm but sharp. "There's an unauthorized intrusion into our company." Within minutes, the police near Reed Corporation arrived, their synchronized footsteps echoing. Tiffany jumped up, eyes wide, hands clutching the hem of her dress, her face drained of color. "No, I didn't," she stammered, her voice trembling as if I were bullying her. "These bodyguards are only here to keep me safe." I stood there, my expression unchanged, my gaze sweeping coldly over her and the guards. "Thank you for your efforts," I said to the officers. "If this is a misunderstanding, there's no need to pursue it further. Please, just escort them out." The officer nodded, turned to Tiffany, and warned sternly, "Be more careful next time." "Come with us." Tiffany's once arrogant face twisted, her expression crumpling like a piece of paper being crushed. She clenched her fists, her eyes blazing with fury. "I know everything now. You can't fool me anymore." "Interesting." I sat down on the sofa. "Go ahead then. Speak." My secretary understood, politely thanking the officers. Tiffany stepped closer, her voice shaking with anger, as if humiliated beyond measure. "You sent that wedding invitation to me, didn't you? You wanted me to back out of this competition on my own? Let me tell you, never!" I cleared my throat lightly, but before I could answer, my secretary stepped forward, her voice cutting cold. "Miss Schuyler, our CEO inviting you to the wedding was purely out of respect for the Hayes family. Do you have a problem with that? Being a mistress is something you're actually proud of?" My secretary glanced at me, her eyes glinting with anticipation. I gave a slight nod, taking a sip of coffee, the bitterness spreading across my tongue. Tiffany couldn't hold back any longer. She shouted, her voice cracking with emotion. "Samantha, Connor loves me!" She stood there, chest heaving, her eyes glistening but defiant. "For me, he gave up every other woman. He's spent millions. He even blocked a car for me, went against the whole world for me. And what has he ever done for you? The so-called fiancé?" Do you really think he loves you? I rose to my feet, my eyes sweeping past her. First of all, I said, my tone steady, but each word cutting like a blade. Blocking a car is illegal. Your boyfriend really did defy the entire legal system for you. Funny, I almost forgot to put him in prison. I paused, letting the words sink in. Tiffany's face froze. And beyond that, I continued, look, Hayes Enterprises stock has already been blocked by me too. I tilted my head, smiling. Congratulations! You've won the heart of a man about to go to jail and go bankrupt. Happy now? Ever since I pulled capital out of Hayes Enterprises, a string of scandals among its mid- and senior-level executives had been exposed. Dumping shares, shifting assets, tax evasion, tax fraud. Hayes Enterprises stock plummeted like an earthquake, practically turning into scrap paper. The more arrogant Tiffany grew, the more desperate Hayes Enterprises became. I had no idea where she found the confidence to stand here and question me. Tiffany's eyes widened in shock, frozen for a few seconds. She had no idea Hayes Enterprises' finances had collapsed to this extent, still naively dreaming about becoming the wife of a wealthy family's son. Yet she didn't forget to accuse me, her voice trembling. This is clearly between you and me. Why drag the entire Hayes family into it? If you have guts, face me directly. I laughed casually, took the handkerchief from my secretary, slowly wiped a few drops of water that had splashed on the back of my hand. Then I threw the handkerchief straight at her feet. Face you? I said. You always overprice yourself. Your value? $100? $100 was the going rate for Tiffany each night on stage at the nightclub. Even if she didn't sell her body, selling drinks and laughter was no more dignified. Having chosen that path, she shouldn't pretend to be noble. You're the one who's $100. Tiffany glared at me, her voice choked, but beyond that one line, she couldn't come up with anything to fight back. My secretary standing beside me curled her lips slightly and added, Reed Corporation is worth about $15 billion, Miss Schuyler. You miscalculated. Tiffany stood frozen, as if she had just heard the cruelest words in the world. Her lips trembled, her eyes reddened. Then suddenly, she turned and bolted out of the building. The bodyguards scrambled after her, leaving the lobby in silence. I slipped my hands into my pockets, my eyes drifting to the glass doors where Tiffany's figure was fading. It seems my dear fiancé did many good deeds yesterday, I said, my voice calm but dripping with mockery. We shouldn't let this go to waste. Find a media account to promote it, my secretary nodded, her eyes glinting with excitement. I wanted to see if the journalists were willing to pay for the story of this so-called moving love affair. Thanks to Reed Corporation's hand, the news of Connor blocking a public vehicle for his mistress exploded online. A surveillance video spread like wildfire. Connor's garish purple Lamborghini blocked the crosswalk. 3 luxury cars sealed off the street. Traffic was paralyzed, horns blaring endlessly, drivers pressing non-stop to no avail. After half an hour of standoff, Tiffany stepped out of the car, lifted her dress, and rushed into Connor's arms, the two cuddling and whispering for a long while before leaving. The headline gleamed, "So romantic! Is this the domineering CEO from a novel come to life?" The most effective way to ruin someone is to first lift them up, then crush them. The online reaction did not disappoint me. I was called in for overtime, took the subway to save money, ended up an hour late because of this mess. Thanks to the CEO, I got fired. Not just the highway, the main roads were jammed, thousands of cars stuck. Are the poor just playthings for the rich? If you want to date, do it normally. Life is already hard enough for us. The traffic police announced no suspect would escape. The investigation was child's play. The one-of-a-kind car, the face known among the elite. Now, having angered the entire nation, no one could save Connor. For a whole week, he didn't dare drive that gaudy purple Lamborghini again. Not because of remorse, but because he was arrested, the car seized as evidence. Connor, the first domineering CEO with a criminal record, sat in jail awaiting bail. Unfortunately, no one had time to help him. Hayes Enterprises' reputation lay in ruins, partners canceling contracts one after another. A century-old family was on the verge of collapse. Some pulled out, others added fuel to the fire. People were astonished. Hayes Enterprises was rotten from its core. After a long absence, Mrs. Eleanor Hayes came to see me, her wrinkled face caked with heavy makeup. "Sam, only you can save Hayes Enterprises now!" I forced a smile, my voice gentle, pretending to console. "Eleanor, don't be agitated. I've heard about Connor. These days I've been reaching out to connections, trying to get him a suspended sentence." Her eyes darkened, her body went limp, collapsing to the floor with a dull thud. I had the staff lift her onto the sofa, then stepped out to the balcony to make a few calls. All about Connor. Eleanor pretended to faint to observe. She liked acting, I acted along. I had plenty of time to play it through. When she came to, she grasped my hand, emotional. "Sam, thank you. Once Connor is out, you two must set a wedding date quickly." I hesitated, my eyes avoiding hers. "Eleanor, Connor and I don't suit. He truly likes Tiffany, even caused a scandal for her. They fit better. As for me, we should cancel." The corner of her mouth twitched, then faded, her eyes cold. "That woman, I won't let her off." She patted my hand, forcing a smile. "Sam, I know you're upset. But for our family, marriage is interest, not emotion. Connor is the sole heir. Girls like that are worthless. Only you are worthy of the Hayes family." I pulled my hand back, smirking faintly. "Auntie, that's not a nice thing to say. If Connor has mistresses, I can keep men outside too. As long as you're fine with it, I'll find a few young, handsome boys for fun. Connor will still be Reed family's son-in-law, no matter how many men I have. What do you think?" Eleanor's mouth fell open, choking, her bracelet snapping in her hand. She couldn't argue back, yet wanted to persuade me. Besides, I didn't even see Connor as anything. I changed my tone, sighed. "Don't blame me. I do want to marry Connor. But he's sitting in prison. Hayes Enterprises in chaos. Tiffany stirring trouble. Even if I wanted to use Reed Corporation's support, the shareholders wouldn't agree." Thinking she had failed, Eleanor heard hope and rushed to promise. "Don't worry, I'll handle that woman, settle the internal strife at Hayes Enterprises, and give you full authority." I smiled, accepted, walked her to the gate of the villa, my steps light on the stone path. For those with value, I always kept courtesy, especially when they brought me the gift themselves. I needed an excuse to intervene in Hayes's internal affairs, and she handed it to me. The Hayes family had only one heir. But could he keep the empire? With division inside and the foundation shaken, the only salvation was Reed Corporation. But what they didn't know, I wouldn't save, I would swallow. Samantha Reed never loses, and Hayes Enterprises would be mine. 3 days later, I sat across from Eleanor Hayes. I slowly slid the contract over, my voice calm. "Take a look. If there's no problem, then sign. Once it's signed, I'll persuade the shareholders, and reviving Hayes Enterprises won't be an issue." Eleanor's eyes lit up at the massive sum just deposited into her private account, and without hesitation, she picked up the pen. Her fingers trembled slightly. She signed, her handwriting scrawled at the bottom right corner, then looked up, her voice full of hope. "Sam, the company depends on you now. When Connor comes out, he'll regret not cherishing you." I watched the tip of the pen glint under the light, my lips curling into a genuine smile, not because of her words, but because of the contract just signed. "Maybe so," I said. "When he's out, everything will be different." A month later, the public gradually forgot Connor's scandal. I worked countless connections, opened every door of power, and finally pulled him out of detention. The day Connor was released, light rain drizzled down, drops sliding down the window of the Maybach. I stood under an umbrella, dressed in a black silk gown, hugging my figure, my gaze sweeping over him. From the strong, muscular man he once was, now Connor was nothing but a thin shadow, his skin pale as paper, his eyes sunken with exhaustion. The once perfectly tailored suit hung loose, like he was wearing someone else's clothes. But the first thing he did was not care about Hayes Enterprises, now a public disgrace, but rush straight to Tiffany's apartment. In front of me, he grabbed her hand, his hoarse voice. "Babe, are you okay?" Tiffany, standing behind the door, looked anything but haggard. I had stopped Eleanor from touching her, even made sure she lived well, putting on at least 10 pounds. The tight dress now stretched taut, her round face glowing with color. Connor's eyes widened, his lips parting in shock at the sight of his lover, not thinner, but healthier, plumper. Tiffany, realizing I stood behind him, her pretty face twisted instantly, eyes blazing with fury. She pointed at me, her shrill voice like a command. "Do you know how Samantha has humiliated me these past days?" She said, "I'm not worthy of you, that I ruined you, sent you to jail. But wasn't it all your choice? Tell her now that you love only me for the rest of your life." Connor frowned. His brows knotted. His lips moved, but no words came out. His gaze shifted from Tiffany to me, a flicker of confusion in his eyes, as if realizing something at last. It's never about shortage, only about fairness. Benefit works like that, and so does love. He suffered for love, while Tiffany flaunted without an ounce of guilt. Even someone like Connor found it unbearable. The next day, Eleanor came again, her voice full of hope. "Sam, Connor is out. You two must hold the wedding soon, don't delay." I sat on the sofa, sipping coffee, my eyes drifting over her, calm. "Auntie, Connor just got out of prison. All eyes are on both families. I don't think we should rush. Better to wait a while." Connor stood there, his eyes darkening, his hand clenching at his side. My secretary opened the car door, inviting me in. Suddenly, Connor grabbed my wrist tightly, his voice hoarse. "Wait!" I turned, my gaze cold. "What else?" "Why did you refuse my mother?" he asked, his voice trembling, his eyes filled with hurt. "Don't you want to take this chance to marry?" I laughed, as if hearing a joke. My smile curved, my eyes glittering with mockery. "Connor, don't delude yourself. I'm the CEO of Reed Corporation. Why would I marry a man with a criminal record? In front of your mother, I only delayed the wedding to spare her sadness. If you still don't know your place, don't blame me for being ruthless." Connor froze, his eyes wide, as if he couldn't believe his ears. "How could you think that?" he muttered weakly. "You always wanted to marry me before." He looked pitiful. I replied coldly, "Sorry, the Reed family doesn't accept mediocrity. Men like you always think you're a prize. But funny thing is, who wants you? Before, I thought marriage was for securing status, but now I don't need it anymore. Whoever wants you can have you." I pulled my hand free and stepped into the car. Through the rearview mirror, I saw Connor standing stiff, his fists clenched, his face pale as paper. That night, I sent the full recording of our conversation to Tiffany so she could savor the love of the man of her dreams. The moment she heard the recording I sent, Tiffany leapt up and in the middle of the night rushed to the Hayes family's gates, screaming Connor's name in the dark. The crystal chandelier light spilling from the mansion shone on her flimsy white dress, trembling in the cold wind. The butler, tall and thin in his black suit, stepped out, his voice icy. "Miss Schuyler, please leave." But how could Tiffany give up so easily? The butler shook his head, signaling the guards. The bodyguards who once followed Tiffany had already been withdrawn by Eleanor, leaving her alone, small against the imposing security team. In the scuffle, she slipped, crashing down the marble steps. Bright red blood spread across her dress. The wail of an ambulance tore through the night, carrying away 2 people. Tiffany, miscarrying in agony, and Eleanor, suffering a heart attack. Tiffany being pregnant did not surprise me. Before Connor's downfall, the two clung to each other constantly, inseparable every day. Sooner or later, this was bound to happen. As for Eleanor, perhaps she fainted from grief over a grandchild who would never be born. When my subordinate delivered the news, I was sitting in my office. I flipped through two photographs. Clicking the mouse, my voice indifferent. Tell the newsroom to use these two as illustrations. Find a skilled journalist. Let them know the Reed family will cover the sponsorship money for the second half of the year. The subordinate nodded and disappeared through the door. I drove to the hospital, pushed open the door of the premium ward. Eleanor lay motionless on the bed, a breathing tube strapped in place. Connor sat beside her. Seeing me, he jumped up, his voice brimming with hope. "Sam, you came!" I pulled out a chair, sat down, my eyes sharp, mocking. "I came to see your mother. And you? Aren't you going to check on the mother of your child?" Connor lowered his head, feigning sorrow, his voice hoarse. "I didn't know she was pregnant." I gave a cold laugh, tilting my head, staring straight into his eyes. "Didn't know? Don't dump all the blame on women. Putting your pants on and claiming you didn't know. That's not your style." He stayed silent. 10 minutes passed in heavy stillness, only the steady beep of the monitor breaking the air. Seeing Eleanor still unconscious, I picked up my bag and stood. No reason to keep pretending. Finally, Connor spoke, his voice faltering. "Sam, don't you understand my heart? I regret it. I know I shouldn't have treated you that way. I was young then. Can you give me another chance?" I stopped, turned back, my gaze cold as ice sweeping across his pitiful face. Chances aren't for people who only know how to waste them. Without looking back, I walked out of the room, hitting walls before turning back, losing a child before learning sorrow. It was too late. Hayes Enterprises was already in my hands, half its senior leadership siding with me. I didn't need to marry Connor to take his empire. The elevator unexpectedly stopped on the third floor, the ward for regular patients. The doors opened, and Tiffany appeared, dressed in a thin hospital gown, her face gaunt from blood loss. Her blonde hair hung messy, her eyes swollen red, as if she had cried them dry. She looked at me, her gaze burning with venom. "Samantha Reed, it's you again!" "You came to watch me humiliated?" I lifted my eyes to the floor display, the corner of my lips curling into a faint smile. "Yes, I came to watch the show," I answered. "Aren't you the one he loves?" "Then why are you only in a regular ward? Even if the Hayes family is drowning in debt, they can still afford a premium room. Or did Connor put you here on purpose, to avoid his mother, and to prepare to leave you?" Tiffany froze, as if stabbed in the heart. Her face twisted, her eyes flaring with rage and pain. She screamed, lunged at me, her thin arms raised as if to strangle me. The elevator was spacious. I only needed to tilt my body to the side. Tiffany lost her balance, crashing hard onto the cold floor, her shrill cry bursting out like an off-key note. Nurses rushed in, blocking the doors, their voices panicked. "What happened here?" I smiled, my gaze sweeping over Tiffany, clutching her stomach, moaning on the floor. "I think Miss Schuyler just missed her lover too much and lost her footing. Call Connor down from the 10th floor. After all, love can heal every wound." In the hospital lobby, today's newspapers stacked high on the rack. I casually picked one up and skimmed the bold headline. "Mistress pregnant, tried to force marriage, beaten by Hayes family until miscarriage." A faint smile spread across my lips, dissolving the last trace of irritation. Not just in print, but online. Rumors spread like a storm. The public, who had almost forgotten the traffic jam scandal from over a month ago, now had their anger reignited. Comments flooded in. This couple again? Causing chaos on the road wasn't enough. Now beating someone until miscarriage? Do the Hayes family think they're kings? Can they get away with anything? Public outrage boiled over. Connor was forced to appear, apologize, and promise the public an explanation. Immediately afterward, the board pressured him into taking leave. Naturally, under my direction. What use is a scandal-stained CEO to a company in free fall? Who would pay to keep a useless man? At the same time, the tide turned against Tiffany. She reacted quickly, opening a live stream from her hospital room, dim light casting shadows on her pale face, her eyes glistening as if on the verge of tears. In a thin hospital gown clinging to her frail frame, she spoke, her weak voice full of calculation. Everyone misunderstood me. I'm a second-year student, an excellent one. I never intended to be a mistress. My mother is gravely ill. My family couldn't afford hospital bills, so I had to work part-time at a nightclub. That's where I met Connor. He said he was single. I believed him, and I was deceived in both love and body. In fact, this was all a scheme by Connor and his fiancée, Samantha Reed. They can't have children. They wanted to use me as a surrogate. When I found out, I confronted them, and the Hayes family attacked me in rage, causing me to miscarry. I will not explain a second time Tiffany paired her tragic story with pitiful eyes and trembling lips. The video spread wildly, a group of fans shouting support, calling her a victim of the upper class. I sat in my office, watching her live stream. One lie needs countless others to patch it. Without holding all the information on Tiffany, even I might have been fooled. My secretary stood by, her voice cold. Miss Reed, shall we call the police and have her arrested? I tapped lightly on the desk, the rhythm like a steady drumbeat. Tiffany wants to use the power of public opinion? Then let her use it. Contact her university leaders and her neighbors. Have them testify within 2 days. Tiffany streamed nonstop, crying and selling products, making plenty of money. She wore tight dresses, live stream lighting highlighting her heavily made-up face, as if she had found a new path, living well without men. But it was too late. In the middle of one live stream, as she held up a perfume bottle for promotion, a few hidden cameras came on, voices ringing clear. I'm Tiffany's academic advisor. The truth is different from what she says. She dropped out half a year ago, and by regulation was expelled. I'm Tiffany's neighbor. Poor family? It's because her parents lost everything gambling, and they still owe me $50,000. The surrogate story collapsed too, when a video spread of Tiffany and Connor passionately kissing as they entered a hotel. No coercion in sight. Tiffany's screen went black, her comments flooded with criticism. At first, she tried to cover up, her voice trembling. Don't believe them, it's fake. But as the weight of public opinion crushed her, she shut down the stream, locked her door, and didn't dare step outside. She escaped the public, but not the law. 2 days later, heavy knocks pounded at Tiffany's apartment door. My people, along with the police, stood outside, the officer's voice icy. Miss Schuyler, you are under accusation for fraud and defamation. But her slander had not only harmed Reed Corporation, it touched the interests of countless partner companies. I didn't need to move a finger. Others handled it themselves. Tiffany was sentenced to 3 years in prison, her record marked with convictions. At trial, her lawyer said she wanted to see me one last time. I smiled and erased her from memory. Wasting even a minute on people like her was too costly. Life is a long road, full of strange people like Connor and Tiffany. I don't care. The only thing I care about is my company, Reed Corporation, and now, Hayes Enterprises as well. On Monday morning, the sky was gloomy, drizzle falling and casting a hazy layer over the glass facade of Hayes Enterprises. Connor stood at the gate, his wet hair plastered to his forehead, his sunken eyes flashing with rage. He screamed hoarsely, "You blind dogs! I'm your boss. How dare you block me? You're all fired!" The security team, in stiff black uniforms, stood in formation, their faces stone cold. Not a word in response. Their hands tightened as they blocked Connor like they would an intruder. Rain seeped through his suit jacket, making him look even more pitiful, like a beast trapped in a cage. A sleek black Maybach glided up and stopped at the gate. I stepped out. A black umbrella immediately opened above my head, shielding me from the scattered drops. The senior executives of Hayes Enterprises also arrived, one of them stepping forward. Miss Reed, you've arrived. The meeting is about to begin. Would you like to rest in the office first? The contrast was sharp. Connor, once the Wall Street prince, now stood in the rain, despised by his own people. He turned to me, eyes bloodshot, shouting, "Samantha! I trusted you. I even wanted to marry you. But you betrayed me, took over the shares. You let the board throw me out. How could you treat me this way?" His tone was as if I were the criminal. He lunged forward, grabbed the collar of one of the executives, and snarled, "What's her last name?" "Reed." "Is she Hayes? You're willing to be dogs for her? This is betrayal that can't be forgiven." The man's face remained cold as he shoved Connor's hand off. "When you dragged Hayes Enterprises into crisis because of your mistress, you lost the right to say that. She doesn't deserve it. Do you?" Connor lost balance and fell onto the soaked pavement, rainwater splashing everywhere. He pushed himself up, trying to stand, but the stares of the surrounding crowd, cold, contemptuous, pierced into his skin like needles. I cleared my throat softly, the small sound enough to make the man who had spoken step back. He lowered his head, his voice hurried. "Miss Reed, I'll have this irrelevant person thrown out immediately." I nodded slightly, my eyes skimming over Connor, like glancing at a streak of mud on the road. Without a direct look, I walked into the building. A man who only causes trouble, earns no money, and drags stock prices down. Sooner or later, he's out of the race. In my mind, I recalled the early days when Reed Corporation was still young, and Hayes Enterprises tried every way to suppress my parents. Their bowed heads of endurance, their sleepless nights to keep the company alive. When Reed grew stronger, the Hayes family tried to cozy up, pushing for a marriage alliance. Connor, with the arrogance of the heir, never saw me as anything but dreamed of swallowing Reed family whole. And now, digging his own grave, isn't he? I had already given Eleanor enough money for her to live comfortably the rest of her life. As for Connor, whether his mother left him a few spare coins was not for me to decide. Under my leadership, Reed Corporation devoured Hayes Enterprises. The suppliers, the production lines, the vast markets, all absorbed into Reed. My business map expanded, step by step toward the peak.